Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Zone Upon 7. Es Viernesito, and I hope that everybody's getting ready to start their day. It's time for us to have our first conversation, and like we informed you, we're going to be talking about marijuana and the pros and cons of legalization. Again, we're giving you insight for you to go about making informed decisions. So whenever you go out into your neighborhood, into the streets, into your wherever click, you're able to, be informed about the conversation. So we have Mr. Pulo Lightborn here and
Michael Clark.
Mr. Michael Clark. Mr. Michael Clark, apologies, sir. He's here, and we're going to be talking about, social justice, but as it regards to like, why should we go ahead and legalize marijuana in the country? Good morning, Mr. Michael. How are you?
Michael is not here. I'm Polo.
Okay, Pulo. Yes, that's what I said.
That's what he said when he was introducing you just now,
Yeah.
actually, though.
Yeah, okay.
But it's okay. Good morning, Mr. Lightburn. How are you feeling today?
Well, I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
Like every other day.
Like every other
Once I
day.
wake up with a spliff.
I love it.
You remind me of Bob Marley, my mentor, right?
How do you call it? Wake and bake?
Wake and bake. But there's actually two types of marijuana. There's sativa
And indica.
and indica. Sativa is like coffee. That's for the day. That's like an eye opener. And indica is like a sleeping pills. That's what they're finding now with quantum physics and all the researches we're doing, where we can actually read the mind of a substance. Because as we should all know by now, the universe is not physical; it's mental. The Mayas found this out 200 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, right here in Belize.
Isn't it like
It's
2000?
Japan.
It's like 2,000 years.
Sorry, 2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2,200 years. All right, when they mastered the zero.
Yeah.
Because to go quantum, you have to deal with the binary code, which is from 0 to 1. Because there's as many numbers between 0 to 1 as there is outside of 0.
Okay.
Right? So,
Yeah.
so for all this knowledge that you have gathered with marijuana, and it's through quantum physics, we couldn't have known this dealing with relativity. For example, marijuana has over 600 medicinal properties. They found that out. They also found out that tobacco, which was legal, has over 6,000 poisons, 70 of them lethal. So my question to Belize, to advocates for anti-marijuana legalization advocates, why aren't you guys fighting tobacco, which has over 6,000 poisons, 70 of them lethal?
Or
It's
alcohol.
responsible for over 500,000 deaths a year in the United States, over 8 million people in the world. According to an LD50 test that they did, which means lethal dosage, where they found that over 40 raw potatoes could kill you. 2 dozen aspirins could kill you. But what they found out, more people die from sugar and salt. Sugar and salt are more addictive than marijuana. And what they found out when they did this LD50 test, lethal dosage, that for marijuana to become lethal, a smoker or a person would have to consume over 1,500 pounds within 15 minutes.
What? I'm trying to.
Jesus done the gang. That sounds like a miracle to me.
So, Mr. Pulo, the conversation that a lot of people are saying is that once this bill is passed and marijuana is made legal in the country, that it's promoting it for everybody to go ahead and smoke weed.
Yeah, but that's fear mongering. Look, there are two major emotions, love and fear. Even when I read my Bible,
You have it with you.
I have it with me. There's the love of God. Let me put it up front, because this is an important book in the Manvarana conversation. In all the stories I read, I've done research on the Bible. I've researched over a dozen Bibles in different languages. I have one Bible that's like 3 different types of Bible, 3 different Bibles in one, where they show you they lost us in translation and in transition. So you find that marijuana, right, has never killed anybody. Okay, what marijuana actually does is balances you. Whenever you think about marijuana, think about balance. That goes where the problem is. If you have a pain in the back, right, the marijuana going to deal with that. If you have a mental thing, it'll cool you off. That's why, like in a Bob Marley song, you have one where say, we're having a conscious party. All right, can you talk about the diurnal marijuana? which gives you energy, make you become creative. That are the one where the artists then take.
So, Mr. Lightburn, in that same regards, people would argue and say that they see marijuana as something that causes people to get very lethargic. They get very tired. There's some people that say the instances where somebody smokes and goes to a job site or whatever it is, they have that tendency to be just, kind of dragging by.
And their productivity.
Their senses aren't as heightened as they should be. They're doing things wrong. And we even had for Uncut that one of the pastors were talking about when he had employed a young man.
Yes.
That was a situation.
Yes, but I saw the Uncut show with the pastors. We throughout the show, first of all, we have a misconception of marijuana. Throughout the show, they were showing somebody rolling a joint. Thank God it was in paper. But throughout the show, they showed somebody rolling a joint. I guarantee you that is not the joint that pastor smoked in the street. Because since 1989, when the U.S. government came and sprayed our marijuana with paraquat, what happened is that in the late 80s, the Belize, Jamaica, Mexico, and Colombia were the 4 major suppliers of marijuana to the United States. In those days, there were Broncos and double Dutch buses going back and forth, and there were U.S. dollars in the street. Because Belize was top 4 in supply in the U.S.
Yeah.
Guys were walking around with, Belize was booming then. And America, they did some research at Brown University, and they found out all this stuff about marijuana, and they decided to grow their own. So they came and they sprayed ours with paraquat. But during in 89, there was a marijuana shortage because of that transition. And what the DERs, so-called guys that sell marijuana, for the first time they started selling roll joints. Okay. Because what they were doing, they were using a thing called, I think it was some kind of chow. Excuse me, this is Michael. Can I just answer and see where he's at?
Okay, no, sir. You can pass it to Chantel, and then Chantel will be able to deal with that for us. Thank you, Chantel.
I think he's downstairs or something. Yes.
Go ahead.
So so what they did, they were selling ready roll joints, and they were rolling up a thing that looked like we call rabbit chow. And they were rolling it up in tobacco leaves, because you gotta hit like tobacco, because tobacco is addictive. Right? By the way, marijuana is described when my first as a non-addictive chemical. Also non-narcotic. The US is paying us to deal with narcotics, those plain full of weeds. That's where the cartel is at. There's no cartel in the streets of Belize. There's over 60% poverty ratio, and over 50% of our youths are traumatized and have mental issues because of policemen going in their houses 4 or 5 in the morning in the dark and kicking down the doors, trying to bust their father or their mother with a black plastic bag, a bushweed that costs $50 Belize. When now in the streets of Belize, you could get a quarter ounce of weed from the States, and they want like $100. But only the rich people, or the haves, or what you want to call it, north side and south side, whichever way to describe it, it's there. The environment is there, and the bottom line, heredity and the environment leads you to your spirituality. So we got to deal with this. The people that are against marijuana, but the poll, you know where the poll should be taken? Amongst the people that use it. And that's why if they want to do some education, because the worst thing about marijuana smoking in the streets is the front of the tobacco leaf. They are rolling it in. That started in '89. And for example, growing up under Bob Marley, our thing was that we used to call people that smoke cigarette ashtray mouth.
Okay.
Marijuana and then we used to call people that drink rum wet mouth. Now today, wet mouth, ashtray mouth, the rule things, and we look for banned marijuana. Okay? Which is the police plant. I was talking to Mr. Henry Young called me about 48 hours ago after I was made a statement on the Creme Wake Up Morning show. And he was telling me that it was him, former First Minister of Tourism, Honorable Henry Young, C.B. Hyde, Charles Barkley Hyde, who the complex building is named after. He's about almost 100 years now. A man called Arton Clark. He was a former permanent secretary. He was a smoker. And Glenn Stewart, who lived in the United States and is an advocate for the poor. They got together decades ago and started this advocacy. Oh, and most of all, the master of the king of the diaspora, Compton Fairweather. Who don't know Compton Fairweather? He was a Belizean in the 70s and 80s. He had his own phone line. It was basically George Price, Philip Golson in Belize, and Compton Fairweather in the US, who represented the Belizean population.
Mr. Lightman, let me just interrupt you right here while we introduce Mr. Clark, who has just joined us on
problem.
couch. Good morning, Mr. Clark. How are you feeling today?
Thanks for having me.
Great. So we're having this conversation about, marijuana legalization. What does that mean for the country? And of course, we're addressing some of the issues that the people are putting out there. One, as Renata mentioned, and what we're having a conversation about is that people are saying that it will decrease productivity of employees at work because based on what people are smoking, it makes them lethargic. They're not as productive.
As productive, their
they are.
senses aren't as heightened. Sometimes they're forgetting to do something or doing something twice or
Because of
whatever
the
it is.
tobacco, the frontal, it's not the weed, it's the frontal, but go ahead. We need to realize.
What are your comments on that, Mr. Clark?
It's absolutely amazing the level of disinformation and embellishment that's been put out, not only in Belize, but particularly when it comes to marijuana. It's been demonized. And you listen to the conversation and you wonder at what point does the salient information come across. Who is it that has the information? The minister doesn't have it. None of the ministers of government or the pastors. And so what you hear is a lot of disinformation. Marijuana, you have to accept that with every industry, there's going to be a new industry that will be pushed back, and there'll be pitfalls. And so the issue is really of finding a salient balance, one that works for everyone.
Okay.
I wrote 2 articles that were published in the Reporter newspaper, and it dealt with the perils and the pluses of having a marijuana industry. Certainly, just as much as you wouldn't want somebody coming to work drunk, you would want somebody coming to work high. Marijuana does not reduce productivity. That is just the reason why they've been able to make that argument is because there's a hypocritical approach to marijuana in Belize. And we have attorneys that smoke, we have doctors that smoke, but they will never come out and say, yes, I smoke.
Yeah, even man will smoke.
I know people that are hyper-productive in Belize. I know people who use marijuana to manage issues, but you have to understand the genesis of the plant. And if the information isn't there, and that only comes with legalization, through legalization, you can have education. I mean, for instance, we have an industry that is supposed to be taking off, and there's absolutely no training. So just about everybody who's going to enter this industry is coming in at an entry level. So,
Okay.
and that's an issue.
Yeah.
I don't know if Paul would want to expand on that.
For example, the laws. There's actually a laws for the south side and laws for the north side in this thing, There's a law that the small man can have up to 2 plants. Okay? He can't have more than 1 ounce, which is 28 grams within a month. But yet he can have 2 plants. The minimum a good marijuana plant is going to yield within 3 months is about 8 ounces. So what is that person going to do when he harvests his plant?
This is a conversation that him and I had last night. It's interesting. Paul and I, we feed back and forth on each
Okay,
other. About.
okay, what was
And
it about?
it's true. So when you look at the legislation, you look at the way it's written, it's basically a cut and paste application, and it's nothing that is organic to Belize. If you want to say that a person can have 2 plants, but they can only have an ounce of bud, and everybody thinks of, and I have to call even you guys out, because I listened to Jules here, and he was talking, and he allowed certain people to make some statements that is just outlandish, and was able to, and not calling, he's very well prepared, but the embellishment was to the point that it was just so over the top.
Maybe
You wonder where is
order.
You wonder where is it that they go for the information?
Statement like which one?
I don't want to give him any airtime because I think, or to get into specifics,
Okay.
because it would take an entire course actually to refute some of the things they say. But you can tell us some of the information. I can say, for one, he says that Belize wants to be the first to legalize marijuana in the world. That is not true.
That is not true.
We've had the entire. You have Argentina,
Canada.
Brazil coming.
Started
right
with
up.
Uruguay. I got a call from the lady that started in Uruguay when I was doing my advocacy for decriminalization. The
There's
president.
Canada, there's Amsterdam,
Yeah,
there's so much countries that are already.
There's
There's an impression.
over
Here in
one
Belize.
third of the
One
states in
second,
the US.
Polo. There's an impression here in Belize that when you talk about marijuana, and you guys, you keep flashing
The
that
joint,
image,
yeah,
right?
the rolling joint.
And so this is about the joint industry, and this is about smoking. It's not,
Perception.
It's so far beyond that. We've gone so way beyond that. It's about biomass. It's about producing extraction. So the market share for the medical maraschino one is set for medicinal. So what the growing part of it is in recreational. And so you're looking at in 2019, you had a projected market share for 19 billion globally. And then we're looking at 2027, 65 billion. Why is it that Belize shouldn't have a piece of that? Why isn't it done properly? Why is it that we don't have the information to say, all right, how are we going? So the fastest growing share is what you call Canada tourism. So we have people coming in from Canada, from the US who will pass through, but they want to find out something that is germane to Belize. They don't want a cut and paste copy of what they already have in Canada and the US. And so when you talk about a centralized nursery that the government is putting out, they've opened themselves to some of these criticisms that they're getting. We've had this conversation going for quite some time. And now, at this point, the UDP comes behind and it says, okay, we're for, you wonder if it's politics?
It's politics. Look,
Or you wonder where,
Belize is not a
where is it
democracy,
coming
it's a
from?
hypocrisy.
But regardless,
You gotta realize
we live in
that.
a democracy.
A hypocrisy, sorry.
We live in a democracy. And if
So-called
people want to go
democracy.
to a referendum, if people want to go to a referendum, let them go.
Yeah.
But my point, because of a democracy, we have to deal with these tenants. But my point is that the PUP ran on a very clear platform, which is that we're going to legalize this thing. People voted them in,
Won by a landslide.
right? And they won by a landslide. So I think the people have spoken. But if they want to go back to the people as many times as you want, because we want them to get this thing right. We don't want it to be as we had in some of the other industries where it just didn't future. It just futured off and nothing came of it. Like, for instance, the oil industry and the fossil industry and
I think some
Can we-
people in the comments have been saying that they think the part of legalization is good and everything, but they feel people should have been educated first. And that should have been where you educate and let people understand this industry properly
But edu-
And
before getting
I
into the
absolutely agree with them.
legalized.
The rollout on this thing has been very, very poor. It hasn't been handled properly. And almost, so it's sort of like a kind of elitist point of, like, we will tell you how this is going to work. And for you to bring in somebody like a Levine that is going to come and school us, and for the minister to get up and say that there is no Belizean that has the qualification, that's crap. That's absolute crap. If you want to start an industry, then it should have been, like you said, the education should have started within the schools. In one of the articles I wrote, it spells out how you can enter this industry and make money without even growing a plant, because there's a lot of spin-off. There's security, there's transportation, there's so many other things, there's HR. So there's lots of opportunities there. One of the biggest things you hear now is that, what they're going to do with this weed money, because it can't go into the banking system. That's crock again. In the UK, we have the evangelicals beating the drum the loudest. And growing up, I was always told that empty barrels make the most noise. The real issue is that the Israelis, which is supposed to be their chosen people, are the biggest importers of cannabis in the world. And one of the biggest exporters comes from one of the strictest markets, which is in the UK. They've been exporting Marinol for years and years and years and years. I've seen some of the facilities. What you have in place, though, in those societies is layers and layers and layers of legislation, true and tried, practice, things that work. Some will work, some won't. But to fearmonger and to beat this drum and say that this thing is just so absolutely wrong without having the education out there. That's why the question, and these are valid questions that people are asking.
And there has also been like research that has been published on the medicinal benefits of marijuana. For instance, there was just up to last month, there was an article published that people are treating long-term effects of COVID with CBD and other marijuana uses. There was a lady in Mexico that she was advocating so hard for this legislation to change because her daughter was, she had a really bad epilepsy that she had like up to like seizures that can cause her death, and then she was getting treated with CBD and other
Absolutely, and that is why, when just having this conversation here, I mean, most of the knowledge is so pedestrian. There's a particular strain that came from that is called Charlotte's Web, and that people are always growing in the direction where they want high THC, and that's because people always want the best, or they want to go to some extreme. And there was this small company that was going on the opposite end, which was growing out the THC and going on the CBD. And they, just by happenstance, they found out that it worked really well for treating epilepsy. And when you tell a mother that whose child is having 100 seizures for a day, and it gets reduced to maybe 10 or 5. I mean, imagine your child having 5 seizures, and every seizure is a death-defying moment.
Yeah.
And when you tell her that they can't have access to this medicine,
300 seizures a week.
right, or we can't have the discussion about it, then that's an issue.
And that's why, as she rightfully says, the education wasn't there. The rollout was just poor.
Some people also, again, like I'm just channeling from what the comments have been
Okay, sure.
saying, is they're saying the legalization aspect is not seriously the problem that people are having. It's just the aspects of how they're rolling out this legalization, like you mentioned. I think people automatically view as, and I have to say, Channel 7, we're doing the same thing with the roll and everything, but there's so much different layers to marijuana, which we don't understand.
Absolutely.
And then also now, as we start off with this legislation, people are just talking about registration for smoke weed, the age rate. Like they're not, as you mentioned in UK, they have different legislations that are like mapped out so we can understand the intricacies, how this is going to be able to roll out. But we don't have that here. And so people are having the problem. And that's why I think the conversation started to rise, because remember, originally people are all for
Well,
when we started.
truthfully, they kind of missed the ball. But in all honesty, you have to give them credit, because I've seen where they've made changes and there've been some input. And so the age was moved from 18, I think, to 21.
Yes.
I think after I had written that article, there were lots of people who had the education to say, well, we need to ask these questions now. And so the questions were asked, and they did make to accommodation. But when you have a group of people that are just mischief makers, and that's their intent, because the funding that they get comes from these far right-wing fringe, because people are not going to church anymore. There's just a disconnect with the church because of the information. This has really
The Bible has been replaced by the internet.
yeah, these kids can go and they can Google and they can search and they can come up with their information and say, you guys are lying to us. There's another. So when you look at the stats that it comes from the far right-wing fringe, and these are the people who support them, who sponsor them. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the church because that's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
Right? But let's try to put all the hysterics aside and focus on the facts and start having areas where people can come and get the education. All these HR companies are out there. They're missing out on a huge opportunity where you can start training people. You can provide people who will work in the industry that are not coming in at an entry level that's going to be able to make serious money.
Right.
It's not about smoking or access to smoking. It's way beyond that. We're late out of the gate.
There's a menu with over 1,000 different items available worldwide. A menu you could order.
Do you think,
online.
based on how the conversations are going now, the new disruption of like referendum and all these things,
Conversation between
But-
who? Between us old men?
but do you think that
Where
we
are the
should
young
be
people
stopping
who are smoking? They're the ones who should be talking.
One moment. Do you
Oh, sorry,
think
no
that
problem.
we should now move on to educating the people first, then like pause the legalization of when it comes to marijuana and everything, and just educate the people
Yes, but
first,
I've been
and then go into the next
I've been
avenue?
doing this for over a decade. I lectured at all the universities and the radio and the television. I had debate with me and the historian from UB against Pastor Wade and the senator who was in charge of drugs. So it's not we need to do more education. I need to be out there, but the churches who is against it don't want it in the school. Because basically, when I listened to see one of them was supposed to be a scientist, they said nothing. Whenever it came to anything good about marijuana, they just kind of generalized and brushed it away. They were focusing more on the negative experience that they don't have. Okay, I've been around marijuana all my life. Actually, when I came out of college, I did my paper on the coherency of driving under the influence, how it affects you. And they did 100. 100 was perfect. Your coherency under alcohol is 68. Marijuana, 94. So that's like instead of having an A, plus you have an A. So it's not that big a deal like they're trying to make out like marijuana, like they mentioned marijuana, alcohol, la cousin. No way, marijuana, tobacco, la cousin. How come tobacco that has over 6,000 poisons and marijuana has over 600 medicinal properties won't be cousin? That you look past something
You see,
black and say
he's
white.
saying is true, and it goes back to the issue to your question, which is about education. And he has made a point that he has drawn out to me time and time again. Because of the low grades of marijuana that people were accessing, Polo has always pointed out to me that people are mixing it with Fanta. What that does is that it brings an additional level of addiction. So you move to a nicotine addiction.
Exactly. And the thing is,
And it's to massage the level that they're smoking. When somebody grows
so
a crop,
marijuana is getting
one
blamed for
second,
what
when
tobacco
somebody
is.
grows a crop and they bring it to the table, they have invested a certain amount of time. And so they're not going to lose a crop because there's a pestilence or there's mold or something. They're going to bring it to the table. So what some of the guys have, like Levine has truthfully said, that there's no screening process. So what legalization does is that it puts labels, so you know the potency.
Regulated.
Originally, back in the days, potency were coming in at maybe at 11% THC. Now, because of technology and now because of innovation and genetics, it's all the way in the high 20s. And so you need to know that if you're smoking a strain that is high in THC, or if you want CBD so you can sleep or you can do for pain, you need to know what is in it. And that comes through legalization. You cannot get that. So basically what they're saying, for the 18% who smokes marijuana here in Belize, leave them to the roll of the dice. Because you don't know what you're smoking. Every time you roll a joint, you don't know what's in there.
That's true.
There's no labeling on what you'll buy.
See, for example, this is an edible package, right? See what it says here? Keep out of reach of children and animals. Warning. Just like cigarette smoking is dangerous to your health. Medicated Jolly Rancher gummies sours. 600 milligrams THC.
Yeah.
So if you want to know, you could Google how much is a milligram and what the potency of it.
Yeah, and you by having your products here, like you're addressing the issue that Mr. Clark mentioned, that whenever people think about marijuana, they automatically think rolling joints.
Not only,
there's more than one
goes-
way how it's consumed, depending on what you're looking for, right? And depending what are the benefits.
It goes beyond, the thing is, it goes beyond rolling a joint. It goes, one really bad gangster us black boy, they roll one joint so that make them the kill.
Yeah,
When that the opposite happen,
that's the image.
when that the opposite happen,
Yeah.
from being around, I've been incarcerated 7 times and I don't have no police record just from being around, like Kobo. There's a white man in Kobo and they say, I'm a spy, I'm the wrong poor people, they found where they go on. Just like Jesus, in the amongst the poor, those probes. I Jesuit taught. All right? We believe in the poor. That's that in my when I every time I download, every time I upload, that come out. So you find that the image of somebody smoking a weed that want to leave black boy smoke one front or joint. No. I had this friend of mine who a Rasta. And on average a person that smoke maybe 2-3 joints a day. And he explained to me that when he in the city where he could get the front, he smoke up to 10-12 joints a day because of the tobacco addiction. One person smoke cigarette, smoke 110 at least 110 a day. I used to smoke
So
cigarettes.
that is the optics that we need.
All right? I said when you go to a farm, when you go to a bush, you only smoke 2 or 3 joints. You can't got no front of.
That is the optics that legalization allows you to address. And those are some of the issues that you need to work with. But here what it is. When you talk about going into an industry, we would be so far behind. We've lost out and most of the market share from the medicinal point of view.
Yep.
There's a thing called heirloom and land-raised strains, which is what is indigenous to an area. And so people who are in the industry will come to an area and they will try to find, because that strain has been capsulized.
Right.
And so the genetics there are locked in. And it's these specific genetics that people are looking for to adapt to for medicinal purposes. We need to go that direction. We need to explore what we have here. And we need to figure out how we're going to get this conversation and get the people who have been on the fringe. Marijuana has always been a parallel economy in Belize. So when you had in the sugarcane industry when it crashed, and when sorghum and other stuff came on board and sugar lost its value, the industry was assuaged by marijuana growth. In the far-flung reaches in PG and those areas where government outreach hasn't reached, these people have always subsidized their existence with marijuana. So to now demonize it at this point and says that it's the devil's medicine, it's just not true.
Right.
Hold up a second. The devil's medicine, this is where I bring my Holy Bible. And I'm going to go to Genesis. This is very important. All right, I'm going to go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 29. But I got to start at verse 22 so that we get the hit of it. Genesis chapter 2, verse 22, creation of man. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowls multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the 5th day. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that crept upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that crept upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he man, male and female created he them. And God blessed them. And God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, behold!
Boy, you saw a song just saying people why they call fun.
I have given you every herb.
Calm down, my brother.
Make I read this, man. Make I finish, Michael. Make I finish, man. That was sarcastic.
Listen to me.
Michael, let me finish. Make I read this part with the Bible.
How long it take you?
I done right now.
All right, hurry down.
And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed.
All right.
Which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in that which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, and to you it shall be for food.
All right.
Amen.
Got it. So
What are the comments you're getting? I mean, what are the questions that people are asking? What is it they would want to know from the panel?
So right now, like the ball is already rolling when it comes to the legislation and the passing of the bill, right? So there's the conversation on the reform. So what is your take on the reform? Should we go for it, and what can we do simultaneously with that process?
I think in terms of going down that road, it doesn't matter what you do. It's going to be they're always going to moving the goalposts. What we do need is people. They talk of a commission. We don't know who the commission members, who are funding the commission, who's going to pay these people, what is their political affiliation. What we do need is to have a conversation. We need to have education. Polo has been out there plugging this thing from. I mean, he's brought me on board. Lots of that. He's actually tweaked my interest in this thing from I was a boy. And people will make an argument and say that, oh, you can't accomplish, you can't. He's one of the most accomplished athletes, I believe, I've ever put out.
Yeah.
But he's not going to be one of their favorite because what it is that he has a lot of influence with the kids. So they see that not as a plus, but as a threat. We need people with grassroots affiliation who can speak the language, that can speak to these children.
That is very important.
Right? That can speak to on all level, on a corporate level. And so people will make an association and we come in here over here to Rastaman. I'm not going to plug myself, but if you look at my bio, I mean, it's years and years that I've put in this thing. At a time when there was prohibitions, when people treated advocacy as saying you're a drug dealer. I'm sure people look for it.
Yeah, he's the son of one of Belize's best permanent secretary in the history of this country. Has done a lot to develop this country.
Yeah, but beyond that, when you traveled and you've seen like different,
Been to Europe, US.
different influences, you have a different appreciation of the possibilities of what can be done. And
I mean, you could clearly see right now, people are kind of on the fence. They're worried more about their children too and what this legalization bill will mean for children because as you know, I think everybody knows this and it's not something that is in a book, but it's a fact that we know either way, that regardless of being of age of 18 or 21, you still find your way to get through the cracks and buy these different things. And their problem is the legalization feels like a door or a pathway to where young people can be able to get
throughout
these
Europe,
accesses.
where when kids have the information, when they know what's available. I mean, we've had.
If you can sit back.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, 'cause,
Yeah, so we've had times where in Belize when we had a scourge, which was a crack scourge. The next generation came and they looked at the elders who smoke crack and said, I don't want to be a part of that.
That's how it works.
And so they've made a decision. That is really how it works. It comes by education. That doesn't come by closing doors and closeting this thing and saying that this is just, you have to, I'm saying the whole adage of war.
That's what fear mongering.
And when you talk about war and drugs and those things are so outlandish and so outdated and so futuristic.
But people don't have the education. And then the thing is, and a viewer was saying too as well, like when you look at the candies and all these different things, people just automatically think, oh, what will my children think when I see this? This looks like something for them.
And that's where
what does that do for
just
them?
like alcohol, just like alcohol
comes in. So there's a trend going where it was marketed to look like something that children would like the colors and stuff. And so there's a definite pushback on that in Colorado and places. No. So when you produce these things, it's going to be in colors that is for an adult. It's not going to attract children because you can have the labeling on it and behind your back. The real issue is that people will smoke. You're not going to stop it. People are going to get access to it. do you want to put it in a safe environment where there's safety canisters and there's safety valves and there's a safe way of saying this is bad for you, or the education is out there where we can now come into the schools and say to children, listen, this is the effect. When you eat cannabis, your system metabolizes it. And so it stays, contrary to what the good pastor said, it stays in your system for a longer period of time. And the high is different, it is intense. So you have to know the potency.
Yeah.
And you also have to know what your malady is. What is the reason? What is the cause? What is the effect? Let me just say very, very briefly, and then I'll let Polo close out. Marijuana, the plant is on two spectrums. You have cannabis on one end, and then you have the heavy body indicas on the other. The popular strains is a combination of both. But what you get from the sativa side is that you get a euphoric feeling, which is used for treating depression and things of that nature. On the other end, you get a dopey feeling, which is not cerebral. It's more of a body high, and that's for people who have insomnia, who can't sleep, and things.
Yeah.
So that's just basic. And then there's a confluence that's emerged somewhere in the middle.
Hybrid, yeah.
Yeah, with the hybrids. And people need to start getting the education and understand that not every weed are weed. Not every weed have the same effect.
Yeah.
Not every weed is coming from a reputable source. And then they make an adult decision.
You know what was super interesting? I think you mentioned it, I think, in this week was when he went to Canada, there was a weed dispensary that you went to. And there was education on all the different types and what it can do.
That's what it requires.
We do not
Like
have
when you go down
that.
Maya Ruin.
So
That's what it requires.
when you're thinking, and you've mentioned this too as well, that you're buying these things, you don't know where to buy. You
Exactly.
mix it with other stuff, and so the effects are totally different and then how it should be.
Right.
And I think that's the effects that people are looking at when it comes to children and all these things, because you don't even understand something, sometimes you fear it.
Mm-hmm.
And then also when we're not regulating it properly here too as well, you just buy anything out of the top of your head and you not understand where to do, that's when problems arise in our country. So I think there is need to be like a goal where we can test what we have. When we do also introduce this market, there needs to be people identified that know what they're doing, that can be able to educate the populace as well when they're doing whatever they're doing. And consultation needs to really start to happen a lot more, because I think a lot of stuff that they throw out and then people they find out after the fact, and it kind of frustrates people because they don't feel included and they don't feel like they understand what's happening.
It has not been inclusive, and to a great fault of the way it has been presented. And I totally agree with you. I think I get the sense that what you're saying is that there should be a pause and there should be a rethinking of it. I get the sense that that's what you're saying, but that is really the mischief that is behind it. The information is there.
The information
Why
is there,
if
indeed.
and then there's a conundrum here that we have the Minister of Police, who's the person who's actually dealing with something that has been considered as a narcotic. Why is it not Beltrade? Why is it not agriculture? Somebody that are better trained, better equipped, that have the infrastructure in place to educate people and to bring it to the table and said, I think Karim needs to remove himself somewhat from the process and have, as some of the criticism is saying, the expert come in and talk on the issue. And to remove all the emotional aspects of it and talk salient about what is going on, and to be able to look at both sides. I encourage people to go and read the articles that I wrote. There were 2 articles written.
On the Reporter, you said?
In the Reporter, and it breaks it down. And it tells you the pluses and the minuses and what some of the challenges are going to be.
I like that point that you mentioned, because whenever you see Karim Musa's face, you think about the legal aspect, you think about crime, you think about all of those things. So it's kind of synonymous to it. And now like he's
Absolutely.
pushing marijuana legislation. So you might say, so you're right. So let's find somebody from different sectors that might have a different mindset.
Karim is well intentioned and
Right.
he's a very good friend of mine, and he's honest.
That's a good point.
And he's honest and he's passionate about what he's doing, but it's the optics. It's the optics of it.
Yeah.
And it's something that just really needs to be addressed. I don't have any issues with creeping, walking, getting to this thing, but getting there, and as long as we know that it's moving along and it's not just mischief makers and naysayers that is trying to usurp and undermine and are promoting an extreme right-wing agenda,
Because honestly,
where their funding is coming from, you know?
yeah, because that same fear-mongering happened when we were talking about the Equal Opportunities Bill, right? Where we saw all the masses of people, because they were pinning it on LGBT people when they were saying this Equal Opportunities Bill like encompasses everybody, but they hammered this where that's where
Did they ever ask
fear
for a
came.
recommendation with LGBTQ bill?
What's that?
Did they ever ask for a referendum with the LGBTQ bill?
They did. There was referendum on it.
There
Right.
was a
So
referendum on
we can see the effect that they had on where that bill is. I mean, thankfully that bill is still getting revised and it's gonna come up again. But we can see the effects of
The question we need to ask is, where is the funding coming from all this? These guys are just rancorous and loud, and monies are being poured into that. And so when they come on board, and you have to look at both extremes, what is the government interest? Who are the monies tailored to? Who's going to benefit from this industry? You know, who are the people that are in place? Who's a part of this
That
commission?
transparency
How
aspect
are
is
the
very
licenses going to be issued? So you have, on one extreme to the other, you have the churches getting their funding from right-wing organizations and doing fairly well for themselves, very well for themselves. And there is no oversight.
Compared to
Nobody
those
knows-
kids on the south side who was
Exactly.
starving.
Nobody knows, nobody asks. And then you have some NGOs. You have these pocketbook NGOs, I call them, that are running around presenting them. But where is the money coming from? Where is the funding? So they're not really pushing issues that are helpful to Belize. They're looking at their next endowment or their next grant. And so they're moving along. And then they have absolutely no oversight. Absolutely no oversight. We don't know how these monies are being spent. You walk into an office and a secretary is being paid $70,000 a year, you know, and they're living high, you know, the money is going into the community where it's not going into research, it's not going into development. And that's what we need to address.
There's a lot of stuff that I feel this bill has brought up.
Yeah. And rightfully
I
so.
could tell that our community is kind of like on the fence. People are swaying on both sides. They understand the importance. Some people are for it, but they don't understand it, and they're actually against the regulations that are presently at hand. And even if some of the senators were talking about it, just saying the idea of like, what does it mean when you do X, Y, and Z? What will this mean for the business community? All these different things. And so definitely we need to have more conversations like this. We need to bring more stakeholders in. We need to have more opinions to see where we can be able to come and find a solid ground, or at least we agree if we disagree for some things, but be educated. I think that is the first thing what I'm encouraging our viewers at home to do. Can you please mention where they can find your articles?
It's in the report too. And there's two articles. There's a first and a second part. And I think people should take a read of it. It's an easy read.
Okay.
And my information is available through the press. I mean, they can get in touch with them, or I can give it to you guys if people want to get in touch with me. And I'd be happy to move this along and have a proper conversation.
By all means, I feel like right now, before anything of saying yes and for this or not for this or whatever, I think we should start just reading, understanding this industry, understanding what are regulations that we would think beneficial, because let's remember that just because it worked for one country this way doesn't mean it's going to work for Belize this way. And so we have to be able to dissect and analyze what's happening in our country and how we can be able to develop with this. And
But what are the statistics? When you look at the Caribbean and you look at kind of tourism, you have countries like Barbados, and they're on board, Jamaica's on board, and it's all geared towards kind of tourism. If we're saying that we have a tourism industry, but we're going to forego that part of this huge pie, is that what we want? We want people in Belize that is always marginalized because they don't have money or they don't have funds to send. It's there. Why can't we develop it? Why can't we have a part of it?
That's a really good.
So should we have
Why
a
is
part?
it that why is it?
Who is
I'm
we?
sorry, huh? Why is it that the stuff that is coming in is being imported and the money doesn't stay here? It goes back out.
We definitely need to have a part 2 of this conversation. Sadly, time is upon us, but I'm hoping this has provoked a lot of people to think a little bit differently, cash out those discrepancies, what they're thinking about, oh, rolling weed, this is all it means, understanding more about the fantasy, the mixture, and all these things, and everything. I think that now it's
so
more putting
way
a pause
beyond that,
and where you can think and see, maybe I need to learn more before I have an opinion.
Yes.
How about that? And so informed decisions are truly important. So inform yourself. You can check out Mr. Clark's articles on The Reporter, but even just so, research, learn, find the statistics,
Go on
see what is
YouTube,
happening, YouTube stuff, find documentaries, understand the concepts, and understand more than just the smoking aspect. Look at the overall industry and see what it can be able
One
to
of the things, in
produce.
closing, one of the things Polo pointed out to me, it's not about biomass anymore.
Yeah.
It's not about flour. I mean, it is about biomass, but it's not about flour. It's not about. It's so highly technical. It's about extraction. It's about distillation, and all that stuff is there. It leads to all different types of industry that people can benefit from once they've grasped these very, very basic knowledge. Once you've had the training.
Training, education, and all of it starts from you taking that initiative on yourself.
See? And she's talking
And so
about
at this
extraction.
present moment, we're going to go to a commercial break. We thank you so much for staying tuned. Thank you for all the people that have been commenting, that have been giving their opinions and making the conversation so fruitful. When we're back, we're going to be talking about volleyball. And so stay tuned for that exciting conversation because tournaments are on the rise. No master, sports they're on, and it's time to get back to some sense of normalcy. So let's see what you can be able to be a part of and support 501 Excellence. We'll be right back.